How are you, mate?
Happy, mate. You're right.
Yeah, yeah.
You look like you spent a bit of time in Tenerife there, mate. You've got a lovely little colour.
I fucking certainly have, mate.
That's your little happy place, Jamie, isn't it? Tenerife.
Oh, mate, my favourite place in the world. I've been fucking dead lucky to go everywhere, mate, but it's just, like, you're right, it's my happy place. I just love it.
Yeah, I know you do, mate. You and Ricky Hatton, like, I'm just going, like, every time I fucking look, like, if you're ever away, you're both just over there all the time. I know Ricky loves it as well. Yeah. I've got to say, mate, I love it as well. Do you know what's the place that you like out there? Like, I like that. Is it Costa DG?
Costa Deca, yeah. That's exactly where we have been, mate. Yeah. So
that's nice there, isn't it?
Yeah, we've been down. That's where we've just stayed now. Yeah, Ricky's got a place over there as well. So in fact, we missed each other by. We was there for a day when we were sort of overlapping, but we didn't get a chance to catch up with each other. But such is life.
Well, it looks like it's hot out there, mate. You look well. You look
30 degrees. It was perfect, mate. Yeah.
Lovely. Listen, James, let's get into it, mate. We're talking about this heavyweight situation. Me and Jake have just run through it. I'd just love to get your take on it, actually. Dillian Whyte failed the drugs test. Another block for boxing, really disappointing, isn't it?
Of course it is. There's no other way to say it other than it's so disappointing. It happens too often, and the reason it happens too often is because not enough's done about it. The punishment is basically a slap on the wrist, and what is that as a deterrent for people to stop doing it? So nobody needs me to bang on about saying there needs to be stricter punishment. But I thought Matt Macklin hit the nail bang on the head. He said boxing needs an overhaul because it can't. There's too many people who are deemed as the person to go to or the person in charge. We need an overseeing governing body, which someone's got to be answerable to somebody who's in charge. And at the moment, there's too many chefs in the kitchen.
Yeah, I mean, Spencer about there doesn't seem to be much transparency, Jamie, in terms of like the tests and how they work and the legalities, and it's just like as soon as this comes out, it seems like the pattern is the boxer just flat denies it, doesn't it? And then you go into sort of a legal situation where no one can talk about it. Then they drag it out, try and find all these little loopholes and all that. I think there needs some transparency where, like, this is it. We've done the test. Maybe put it out to the public. Everyone can have a look, and then and then these are the consequences. But it doesn't seem to be very clear. It's very confusing, isn't it? The whole.
I think even something like that, it would be probably more of a deterrent. The problem you've got, Jake, is so going back to Dillian Whyte, years and years ago, he failed the test, and it was for something we'd bought over the counter. And I spoke about this yesterday with somebody else, and it was like, can you flat out go to someone who maybe in the innocence of it all has gone in the shop and bought a supplement which they deem to be safe and regulated because they bought it from a shop, and then they fail a test. Now, is it fair to them to go to them then? That's it, you're banned for life. I don't think so. I think you should have a ban. And then you should explain to them, which they should know anyway, to be honest with you. But you've got to give them the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. They should, you're a professional athlete. These things have to be checked before you put them in your body. If it happens again, that's it. You're done.
Well, here's this one, James. Sorry to just jump in, but if they get caught for a drug that is known to be performance enhancing, not something you could buy over the counter, like you say, that was a banned substance in a pill or whatever, because this is my argument. I go, if they're caught with, say, nandrolone in their system and they know that there's a lot of it there or whatever, I think that's when they throw the fucking book at them, mate, because I think that will make fighters start thinking twice, because I understand there's certain levels of it. And like you say, there could be a foul test with something in it that's not even performance enhancing, and they don't know about that. I understand that, 6 months, a year, whatever. But when you get into the hard stuff and the performance enhancing stuff, and Jamie, you know better than anyone, mate, because of the career you had and how tough it was. Fucking lives on the line, man. You go,
absolutely. And you've got to go. So VADA testing is the most stringent testing, and it picks up stuff which is like branch stuff, which is things what are taken, which then have a reaction, which then makes your body produce different stuff, which then would give you so it's not just the first start of stuff what gives you a a performance enhancement. It's something what would have a knock-on effect in the future. So for me, every fighter, every level which is past the title level should have that type of stringent testing. And if you fail that type of test, there's no questions asked. That's it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but always the issue, Jamie, is who's going to pay for it as well, doesn't it? At the moment, it's the boxers themselves. But if you had a governing body, then presumably that would be funded, and they could, they could pay for the testing out of that. But the issue is, at the moment, no one wants to pay for it, do they?
No, they don't. But let's have it right. The sport at the highest level at the moment, we're talking about the sport in a detrimental view at the moment, and rightly so because of what's happened. But I've never known this sport to be as buoyant and so many promoters across the world putting on big shows continuously. It's thriving, and I'm sure we're going to look back at this point in time and go, but that was a good time for boxing. Yeah. But so there's enough money. What I'm saying is there's enough money there around to have this type of testing done, especially if the promoters at the top and the people who are earning the top money filter that money down in the right way, and make the sport a better place. You do have to get a certain type of person who's willing to go, all right, listen, I'm going to sort of take a dip myself. I'm going to do something for the sport rather than do something for my own bank account. I'm going to put some money aside, and that's going to pay for everyone's testing for the next fucking 10 years.
Yeah.
And people are doing it in football. People investing massive money in football. We've seen money, money coming from Saudi Arabia and places like that. There's endless pots of money for people who want to do the sport in the right way, and doing the sport in the right way that's definitely got to be the first point of call for this.
Well, why don't you put one together, Jamie? You seem to know what's going on.
Me and Spenny are going to have a whip round, and we're going to get a bank account done.
Listen, mate, it's not worth having a whip round, mate. We'll just delve into our little, our little pots of gold and go from there.
That's what I mean.
I'll grab my man bag in a minute. I'll see what it's talking about.
Right, listen, enough of the depressing stuff anyway. Listen, it's good that Anthony Joshua got a standing opponent as quick as he did. It's good that actually Eddie acted as quick as he did as well, moving on from the Conor Benn situation and what a shambles that was. He admitted today on TalkSport, actually, we know we got a lot of things wrong. We wanted to improve on that, and I think we've done the right thing, which he has. So credit to Matchroom for doing that. They pulled the plug straight away, which is great news. And in comes Robert Helenius.
Yeah.
He's been around a long time, Helenius. But I was saying, James, perfect opponent really for Joshua because he's on that rebuilding program, and he's in trying to reinstall that confidence. Yeah. Helenius should fit the bill perfectly here.
He should do. And I do feel for AJ in this situation because he's stuck between a rock and a hard place with, do we try and please people too much and go with an opponent who's willing to take it, but it's a bit dangerous, i.e. someone like Ruiz, where we see what happened last time, where it's a potential banana skin because, as a fighter, Spen, it's not that you're not confident in beating someone, but having the disappointment of a fight, a domestic fight like this where everyone was looking forward to it, falling through, and then having to pick yourself back up against another opponent, it's dodgy ground. Do you know what I mean? So you really have you've got to try and get the balance right of someone who the public are happy with, and but not sort of someone who's too dangerous. It's a really difficult job. I do feel for everyone involved, and I don't think they've done that bad at all. Like, no one can complain about this, given the situation.
Have you ever been something similar, Jamie, of any of your fighters? Have they ever had to have a late replacement, sort of like? Have you been through that experience with fighters that you've looked after and trained?
Do you know? To be honest, in terms of topping the bill and stuff like that, no, I've not been involved in. But I did it myself. I came in at 5 days' notice to the British title, and I won. I caused a massive upset. I was 20-1 underdog. So I've sort of benefited from that, being in that situation. And I can imagine. So the guy who I fought, Michael Jones, afterwards was talking about, I didn't train for a southpaw or a pressure fighter. There was so many things going against him, and he was right in many ways. You know what I mean? I took advantage of that, and that was the sort of the springboard for my career. But in terms of from being a coaching point of view, I've never been in that situation, and it must be really difficult, because there'd be a lot of people in AJ's team sort of really cautious, mainly because of what happened during the Ruiz situation.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of people actually in the team, Jamie, listening to Eddie earlier as well, that's saying, listen, mate, if you want to pull this, pull it, because like you say, it's the psychological side of things. Jake, when you've been working for one guy, let's just use it as an example, of Southpaw, he's tall, he's rangy, and then all of a sudden your opponent changes and you've got a short, squat, tough guy. You've got to change your whole mindset. So you need that adaptability as well. But it's like you've been like, you live, eat, sleep it. Like you wake up thinking about this geezer, you go to bed thinking about him, and then all of a sudden, bang, it's gone, and you've got someone else.
A different guy. Exactly. It really is. And I've talked about this a lot with my fighters. You know, when you get to this level, so say for instance you get to a world level and you're boxing world championship contests, there's no doubt that you're a capable fighter. For me, the main thing when you get to that point is the psychological point of it. The mindset is a huge thing, and that can not just make a little difference, can make a big difference between winning and losing. And I think AJ's done a lot of soul searching over the last few years since the Ruiz fight, and he's become a little bit more cautious and tactical. You know, sometimes people have been critical of him. That I understand why he's done it, because he's tried to better himself as an all-round fighter. I just feel like now's the time for him to sort of start going back towards that sort of killer instinct, because he's learned the lessons. And if he ever gets in those positions again where he's in a bit of trouble, he can fall back on the lessons he's took on board over the last 3 or 4 years. And then I think the reason people liked him so much in the first place was because of that killer instinct. Some people want to see a little bit more of it. They don't want to see him sort of reckless, but just edging a little bit more towards that.
Yeah, he definitely rolled the dice a lot more, Jamie, didn't he, at the beginning? Whether that,
yeah, he did, and that's what everyone loved about him.
Yeah, exactly. Whether in his mind was inexperience or whatever, and yeah, obviously he's tried to add to his skill set, but yeah, I think he's just got to stick to what he does, and he does what he does, and he does it effectively, and that got him to that position. So yeah, I think you're right. Go back
what was the excitement about AJ was that air of vulnerability that he had about him, but he would fight with his heart on his sleeve. Do you know what I mean? Where he'd fight in there and he'd go there, and like Jamie says, it was reckless pressure that he'd done, and then he got knocked out. But then what you need to do then is it needs to be educated pressure, but you need to still implement that same sort of pressure, but it needs to be educated, and that education comes with experience. But what AJ's done is he's thinking about it too much, and he's too defensive now, where he
think about it
back to what he knows a little bit more, and that's what will take him to the top again.
When you think about it, he didn't get knocked out like, for instance, like Lennox Lewis did against Oliver McCall, and then he's become gun shy because he don't want to walk onto a big shot. I feel like the lessons he should have took on board a lot, you know, moving around coaches and working on defensive maneuvers and his tactics and stuff like that. I feel like the lessons what he wanted to take, he should have got from them now. You know, learning how to navigate those situations where you've been maybe clipped with a big shot and you've been shook up. You can shut your opponent down, get through that sticky situation, then get back to what you're good at. You don't have to stay in that cautious mode all the time. You just need to know it's your backup plan if and when you come into those situations.
Sure. And I think putting yourself back mentally, like Jamie, back to when you won the British title and you came into that fight with 5 days' notice. If you think of your mindset going into that fight, you probably stepping into that fight, you think, oh fuck it, I've got nothing to lose. You probably go into that quite confident, don't you? And you sort of like,
Jake, the only fight I ever had in my life where I knew I was going to win because I don't know why that was. I was so confident, and I think the reason was because there was no pressure on my shoulders, and I could afford to just go in there and give it 100% without any expectations. So it was just ideal, perfect scenario, really, for me.
Can you imagine the pressure on Anthony Joshua's shoulders though when he goes because of like you know he's known outside of the boxing fans. He's brought the casuals. He basically changed the sport, really, didn't he? Reinvented the sport in many ways by winning that Olympic gold medal. You know, he sort of captured the imagination and built boxing as big as it is today. So that pressure that he's got on his shoulders is fucking huge.
Massive, mate. And when you get into the position where AJ is, first of all, he's privileged to be in that position, and people rightly say, you know, he sort of. I love that video. I've seen that video recently of Roy Jones talking to his fighter, the heavyweight, and he's talking about when you're given this ability, you have a responsibility to do it, and that's the reason why God's given you this talent is because you're capable of doing it. And I know it's a lot of pressure on your shoulders, but you have a duty to fulfill it. And you know, AJ's good enough to do it. He was in a position. You know, the timing of it all was great after the Olympics and stuff. But us as boxing fans, have got a big debt to AJ because he's carried this sport. Like he really has put it to another level. Eddie's done a great job with marketing point of view, and you know, I think in many years, people are going to look back and it's going to be underappreciated. I believe, you know, a lot of people love to criticize and they love to have a go at people, especially who are in his situation, or you know, people at the top. I disagree. I think he's been fantastic for this sport, and we've got a big debt of gratitude for him.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. Listen, Jamie, we know you just got back from holiday, looking fucking well, mate. By the way, I've got to say that you got a little glow.
The missus keeps saying it's been. I've got to be honest with you. I'm fighting her off with a bat.
I've got to tell you, I've known you for many years, but you're looking one of the best I've seen you, mate. Anyway, listen, Jay, we know you're the ambassador of Maverick Stars Trust, and you do great work with them, you know, up in Manchester. I mean, what's going on at the moment? What have they got coming up? Anything we should know about?
Mate, you know what? Charlotte's always busy with it. She's basically non-stop. I've never known anybody with the type of work ethic of her, and it's basically helping anybody, any boxing gyms who are across the country who need a bit of help. She's always there for a bit of advice. Our gym, for instance, this week is for the first time since Christmas, I've got a week off. The coaches have closed the gym down, and the kids are having a week off. But the work, what they're doing in the community is amazing. Honestly, it really is. And I'm so proud to be a part of it.
Brilliant. She ain't started selling fake tan or anything, is she? Because you have not got a glow, mate.
Mate, I promise you, this is all real. It's all paid for. Tenerife has done me a right favour.
Need to get ourselves out there, mate. Well, listen, we won't take up any more of your time, Jane. We really appreciate it, as always. Great speaking to you, mate. Great friend of the podcast, and we'll speak to you soon, yeah?
No worries, mate. My pleasure.
Bless you, mate. Cheers.
See ya.